What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. 3 of the people who made Mortal Shell 2 just sat down for an hour and 20 minutes, and they answered the question everybody keeps asking me, what happens to this game next? And they gave away more than I expected. There is an empty slot sitting in the shell room that they would not explain. There is a list of things they say this game can take, and there is a free download that might fix the achievement problem. So let us go through all of it. Quick note on where this is from so you can weigh it properly. 3 founders of Cold Symmetry went on a gaming podcast the day after launch. That is Vitaly Bulgarov and Andrew McLennan Murray and Anthony. One of the hosts had early access to a build with the developer tool switched on, so the questions were sharp and specific rather than the usual promotional stuff. But I want to set your expectations properly before we start. Nothing in this video is announced and nothing here has a date. This is what the developers said out loud in conversation. That is not the same thing as a roadmap. Start with the one that made me sit up. One of the hosts asked the question every returning player once answered. Where is Solomon? He was a fan favorite shell in the first game and he is nowhere in this one. Vitaly did not say no. He said they were not going to spoil anything. Then he pointed out that there is space in the shell room. His words were that there is an empty slot sitting there. Then he stopped talking about it. Now let me be straight with you about what that is and is not. A gap in a menu is a hint. It is not a confirmation of anything. Studios leave room in a layout for all sorts of boring reasons. But this was a developer choosing to point at it on camera rather than just saying no comment. That is a deliberate move, so I would file it under strongly suggestive and nothing more than that. I want to hear your guesses though. If that slot does get filled, who do you want standing in it? Drop it in the comments. Then Anthony gave the clearest answer of the whole conversation. He said the way the game is built, they can expand the world, they can add content to what is already in there, and then he listed exactly what that could mean. New areas and new shells, new weapons and new Tarstones as well. His phrase was that it is all easily expandable within the context of this game. That is a developer telling you the foundations are already sitting there in the build. And look at how wide that list actually is. Areas and shells and weapons and stones are basically every content type this game has. And in the same breath, he said the part you need to hear, they do not have anything concrete at the moment. He finished by saying it depends on how things shape up moving forward. So read that whole answer as one sentence, not two. The engine and the world can take more content. Nobody has decided that more content is being made. Those are very different statements, and a lot of headlines this week only ran the first half. The host asked whether post-launch would mean revisiting the ideas that got cut or cooking up brand new ones. The answer was definitely both, and the detail underneath that was the fun part. They said watching people play immediately generated new ideas. Somebody walked past the statue covered in teeth and made a joke about it. The reaction in the studio was that it would make a great dungeon, so the feedback loop is not just bug reports. Your reaction to a piece of set dressing can become a design idea. One community question came up that I know a lot of you have asked me too. Will there ever be a way to refight bosses? And I need to be careful about who said what here. That push came from the host, not from the studio. He had been playing a build with developer tools enabled. He could respawn bosses and swap between shells to test different builds against them. He described it as Christmas for a build crafter. The developers listened and they did not commit to anything, so treat it as a request on the record. This next bit is the most concrete thing they said all episode. You already know the Slayer Seal blocks achievements on that save file. What I did not know is that the lockout was never the plan. They originally wanted a separate set of achievements for seal runs. The idea was that the seal is an alternate way to experience the game rather than just an easy mode, so even a hardcore player would have a reason to go back and play through with it. That version did not make it out the door. Then came the line that got my attention. They said they know you can define extra achievements through downloadable content, and they wondered out loud whether a free post-launch release could carry some additional ones that would bring back their original idea. Seal runs would earn their own achievements instead of earning nothing at all. It is the closest thing to a content plan anybody from the studio has said out loud so far. So here's what they floated. They might introduce other accessibility tools in future that would not require a lockout at all. They might be able to define additional achievements on top of the existing set, and the way they could do that is through free post-launch content. They also said that in a few more patches, there may be new options that let you play without the seal and still earn everything. But count the maybes in that. There are 3 of them in about 40 seconds of talking. Nothing there is a promise. That leads into how they think about difficulty generally, and it tells you the shape of whatever comes next. They are not interested in a slider in a menu. If they do difficulty options, they want them to be things you find in the world, items you pick up. That is exactly how the Slayer seal already works and how night mode already works. They said they would like to explore more of that in future. So if new accessibility tools do arrive, expect to hunt them down rather than tick a box on a settings screen. Now, for the part that actually affects whether your complaint counts, somebody had accused the studio of never playing their own game. The accusation was that they just listen to streamers and nerf whatever gets complained about loudest. The developers pushed back on that with data. They watch telemetry from real playthroughs. They look at where players actually die and where they actually stall. The host had seen those numbers himself and backed them up on it. There is a small detail in this episode that tells you how they are working right now. Partway through the conversation, one of them mentions a patch going out that same day. Then he admits he was about to push the button on it. He had to stop because the podcast was starting. That was the patch that refunded everybody's glimpses. So the deploy was sitting there ready, and it went out a couple of hours late because of an interview. That is a very small studio operating with almost no ceremony. But they were clear that the numbers are not the only input. They go through complaints case by case. Sometimes a small vocal group makes a genuinely good point about a part of the game they overlooked. Sometimes a complaint just confirms the game is working exactly as intended. They also said the honest constraint out loud. They are a small team supporting a live game right now, so they have to choose carefully what ships each day. The example they gave was a good one. If an area has punishing runbacks, it gets a mini beacon. There was one more answer that explains a lot about the uncertainty in this video. They were asked whether bigger budgets would make them play it safer. The answer was blunt. They said creative freedom matters more to them than the money. They want to make something more polished and reach more people, but not if it means sacrificing what makes the game feel genuine. If a funding deal came with another layer of management to satisfy, they would walk away from it. They would rather stay small and a bit rough around the edges, and that fits everything else they said about themselves. Mortal Shell did not start life as a Souls-like at all. They told the hosts it began as a roguelite before it turned into what we got. The playable sheep in the first game was not even designed. It started life as a bug. They thought it was funny and it stayed in the game. The loot in this game became a real weapon by roughly the same process. So when these people say a new area is possible, take it seriously. This is a team that follows an idea because somebody thought it was cool. So let me put the honest boundary on all of this. There is still no roadmap. There is no announced expansion, paid or free. There is no date on the bigger patch the studio said is being tested. The achievement lockout is live right now, and it only maybe gets addressed later. And crashes are still being handled by hotfixes as they come. Nothing in this episode should change what you do in the game this week. What it does tell you is what the studio is thinking about it. That is everything worth pulling out of it. New areas and shells and weapons and Tarstones are all possible with nothing concrete behind them yet. There is an empty slot in the shell room that they refuse to explain, and a free download may eventually solve the achievement problem. I want to know which one you actually want most. More world to explore or more shells to build around? Let me know down below. I will cover the bigger patch the moment it lands. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.